Welcome to another episode of Bowcast. This is the archery podcast with the new school archer in mind. Bowcast covers everything from tips, techniques, and archery technology that will help raise your success in the field. And now, here is your host, covering the straight shot, Carrie Zilka.
Welcome back to another episode of Bowcast. This week we're talking to Danny Hinton. He is a dude from Kentucky who knows an awful lot about bows. He was suggested by Will Brantley because Will said he was an awfully colorful individual to talk about, but he really knows his shit. So we are going to talk today about home bow maintenance. Danny, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Maybe.
Maybe. We'll see how much editing I have to do after this.
Exactly.
Well, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your background, what you were doing, and what you're doing now?
Let's see, I started out in the when I started bow hunting, I'm older than I'm sure you are, but started out with the Pearson Ultra, good old round wheel cam thing, and then I got a Hoyt. I walked into a local door shop. They told me Hoyt cams didn't need tuning, and I went back and went to the bank and got my first $50,000 to start an archery shop.
Huh.
Let's see, I did that they irritated. I had told them exactly what they needed to do to tune the cam and a half system on a Hoyt, and they refused to do it because they believed that they didn't need to be tuned. So I drove literally back into town, stopped at the local bank, got $50,000, and then the rest is history. So
that's interesting.
Did bows for 10 plus years until they got so expensive. Outfitters in our area locked down land. Morale from the hunters went to crap. So I switched over and did Cerakote and custom coatings and vinyl graphics and everything. I kind of started with the archery company for a few years, and now I just run a couple other companies and do all this other stuff on the side still. So
that's crazy.
I've literally, now that I run this other company, I have converted everything. If we're going to talk home bow maintenance, I've got a Craftsman rolling 4-drawer. I mounted a Last Chance archery press on the top of one side. On the back side is my arrow cutter, and all my stuff's inside.
That's interesting.
And I can do everything within this little 2.5 foot area.
Really? Because I see, just being honest, I see a lot of these pro staffers and folks on social media, and they're showing their home bow systems and the maintenance that they do on them. It looks really complex. I am, for as nerdy and as technical as I am, I'm still not, here 13 years later, I'm still not super comfortable working on my own bow. I go to my favorite bow shop. They do it, I trust them, but there are times when I'd like to tinker. I'm just afraid of screwing everything up because bows are expensive.
Well, you're actually part of the minority that has a decent shop left.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that based on people that I talk to for all over the country. When they call me asking for something because their bow shop couldn't do this or do that, and I'll tell them what to do, and it's just because they don't have anybody. But the stuff that you see when you're given free presses and 10 dozen arrows, a quarter or whatever to promote something, it's going to look like some overblown pro shop. But all you really need is an arrow saw and a bow press and Allen wrenches and a couple other tools, and you can do just about everything. Now, I don't recommend everybody just going out and starting cutting on their bow, but it can be done.
Well, walk me
But
through.
here's what I'm going to do to contradict everything I'm going to say for God knows how long.
Okay.
If it is set up correctly, there is little to nothing that needs to be done.
Okay. So
literally last week I had go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to say, but then, so they recommend that you get your bow tuned up every year. That's not really maintenance. That's just, well, I guess that is maintenance.
It is maintenance, but it's not necessary.
Okay. Explain.
I mean, and I'm going to piss off some bow shop owners now.
I know, right?
Okay. In the early 2000s, the string material was garbage. Especially, well, I'm going to name names. Hoyt had one of the worst strings. You almost wanted to change it out when you bought the Hoyt. You could buy Hoyt, and you needed to change the strings out because they continually stretched the whole life. So, yeah, if you shot it a lot, you needed to retune it quite often. That's why I got in business of what I did, because they swore it didn't get out of tune, and they do. 452X came along for a string material, and everything changed. They don't stretch, or the stretch is so minute you're probably not going to notice it, no more than most people shoot. And so you get to this point where if it's tuned right from the factory, the average shooter is not going to need it retuned every year. You would want your local pro to go over it, or if you see something problem, or if your groups go from a 1/4 inch to 2 inches, yeah, you need to figure out what the hell happened. Now, and 9 times out of 10, it's probably just you.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. The string material, limbs don't degrade like they used to. That's one thing I will have to give all the manufacturers across the board, is the fact that the materials they're using are a whole lot stronger than when I started.
Sure. So how do you
know? So they just don't need it.
How do you know that it's tuned properly when you get it from the factory? Say I order a bow and it comes, and obviously I haven't shot it all, so I would unless I don't know. I would assume that I would pick it up and not be, shooting Robin Hoods over and over and over again right out of the gate. That I might. I
used to. I still got my old shop next door. Now it's a extra large junk room for all the shit I keep buying. Mm-hmm. So, but on the ceiling in where the range was, there's probably 40, 50 Robin Hoods up on the ceiling.
Okay.
From just me. And most of those were when I would set up somebody's bow, build their arrows, and check it for tune. And I could Robin Hood 1 and 2. And I'd stick them on the ceiling.
Okay, so then a bow should arrive, and you should be able to hit 10s.
Most of them have to be checked for tune. You don't know the worker that put it on, or if the string needed an extra twist, or the cam lean wasn't right. That's where I did really well, is because it didn't matter if it came straight from company X.
Sure.
I checked everything before I set it up for you.
Okay.
And a lot of them come tuned. There's some companies that don't come tuned. It's like they throw some strings on it and throw it in a damn box, and it makes no sense for especially what these things cost now. But they don't come tuned like they should.
Well, when you say tuned,
and so you
be specific. Exactly, like what do you mean? Like what exactly is the bow manufacturer doing before they put it in that box?
Okay, some bow manufacturers, and there's only really all you can do is tune cams. Mm-hmm. We're gonna, it's a raw bow out of a box. You're gonna pull it out. You're gonna look at it. You're gonna put a D loop on it, set it to their length, and then the first time you pull it down, you need to check your cam lean. Depending on the models, some models are supposed to have lean in them. And then check your timing. There's always a timing mark. And that's 90% of it is right there, because sometimes there's a string that needs a twist, or you got to take a half twist out, or you got to mess with it just a little bit that they didn't get it. Because the best thing to do with a new bow before 452X was take it and put it in your car for a day. As soon as you buy it, then bring it back to me. Because the strings would get hot and stretch, the wax would ooze to the surface like it does, and then it would be out of time. Now, I could look at it, and some of the guys that work for me got to where they could look at them and say, oh, it needs a half twist in or a twist out or whatever, and it'd take us 5 minutes and go on with life. But it's just, And the main thing, like, let's see, I'm up walking around. I've got bows in here every year that I'm redoing an older Elite right now. And I put the string on it last week. And they've got two little holes in the cam that are supposed to line up a certain way. And right now I'm going to have to add a twist because it's under-rotated about one twist. And then you take a Bowtech, that's what I shot last year, and the marks look good on it, but the only way to tell if a 2-cam is really kicking it is to pull it back and make sure your stops hit it exactly the same time. That'll tell you if it's out or in. I call it spongy, or, Brantley makes fun of me because I always call it about a squishy ass end. And that's usually when it's when one cam stop hits, and then, but you still got squish, and you pull it back just a little bit more, and then all of a sudden it feels solid. You should come, and when you draw, it should hit the stops or whatever, and it shouldn't have much more give to it after that. You should hit a good wall.
Okay.
And that's how you tell if one's in or out. You can have your buddies pull it back, but make sure they pull it back with an arrow and aim at a target, because I've watched more grown men almost puke letting their buddy check the draw cycle in my shop with bows and them slip out of their hands.
Oh my God.
And them dry fire bows. One day I had one guy that dry fired one at 4:00 in the afternoon on a Friday before season opened on Saturday.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
No
I'm
way.
talking, these were two big old boys. Both of them over 6 foot, probably closer to 6'4", and both of them about 300 pounds. And I was working my ass off and heard it pop.
Oh my God.
And everybody just looked at me, and I was like, I seriously want to sleep tonight. I know you're going to want to hunt. So bring that pile of shit over here and let's try to fix it. But yeah, the cycle's going to tell you everything.
Okay.
And I don't know how to explain that, because most people don't get the luxury of shooting every different manufacturer like I do every year. And so it kind of logs in your memory on what it's supposed to feel like, but it also logs in your memory what it's supposed to feel like after shooting a bunch.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha.
And with draw stops, both draw stops should hit at the same time. If you have your buddy pull it back, put an arrow in it, hook up to it, and draw it back and tell him to stop right when he feels the first part of resistance, which is the first stop hitting. You can look at the cams, even if you're not a Bowtech, and say, oh, well, this bottom one's out 1/8 of an inch. Or they're both hitting at the same time, so it's good. That's the easiest way. Full draw is the easiest way to check your timing. It's hard to do by yourself, but if you have a buddy shoot your bow, hold it at full draw, you can figure it out really quick.
Okay. And that... Pretend like I've never seen a bow in my life, or I don't know what it is. Explain to the listeners what a draw stop exactly does and what it is.
Okay. Draw stops are on the cam. They usually have markings with them. It's a little rubber-covered peg. So when you pull the string back, this peg flips over and rotates with the string going out and touches one of the cables at full draw. That's what stops your cycle. I don't know how long you've been in this, but at one time, Elite had to send out warnings because people were trying to, you remember that? You would overdraw it without draw stops on it, and it would lock up at full draw. Some of the spookiest crap I've ever done has had some idiot bring that in, and ugh.
Because you're like, just
stuff like that scares me. Oh yeah, just the wrong little tick on something is going to send everything back in motion the other way. But let's see, a lot of them are made to where they can't be overdrawn, but they do not function correctly without the draw stop in the right spot. I'm trying to look around here. Some of the.
Does it
Go
matter
ahead.
what kind of cam you have? They all have draw stops, right? All of them.
They all have draw stops. In your manual, it will show you a timing mark. Most times. Don't go to, God forbid, I'm going to leave the name out, but some of these forums asking people how stuff is supposed to be timed.
Everybody knows exactly what you're talking about.
I'm a middle-aged guy from Kentucky. I don't read instructions either, but sometimes you have to look at the pictures. And if you'll look at the picture, it'll tell you what stuff's supposed to do. Because I've seen more stuff wrecked by, so-and-so said, this bow will shoot better if you out-time it and put the top cam, accelerate it, and delay the bottom cam, and so you're out a quarter inch, and da-da-da-da-da-da. No. These guys have engineers that stare at the same crap every day. They know optimal operation of the equipment, so just let them have it. One Saturday, and it was one of my later, I had two guys come in, and they got in line because when I opened near season, you just had to come in, drop your crap off, and then I'd call you back. And they had my part-time guy taking, writing down tags, saying what it needed done. And he called me back, and it was these two guys from Arkansas with a Bowtech. And they asked if I could get it done today. And I'm like, man, I'm 2-3 days out. And they're like, we drove 4.5 hours up here to see you. Wow. I said, why the hell would you do that? And they said, our local pro shop could not figure it out. And they said the only person besides sending it back to the company that could figure it out was me.
Wow. That's cool.
Which made me feel good. It was really cool. What was even sadder at the time was Bowtechs, when they introduced their flex guard, the cams didn't need to be straight at rest. They had massive cam lean in them at rest. But when you pulled it back to full draw, the cam lean went out because the flex guard moved everything around. The local pro shop had tucked the cam lean out of it. It literally took me 15 minutes. I charged them the usual $20, and they were back on their way.
Holy cow, that's crazy.
But, it was one of those things where you get these people that don't want to call the company that work because they think they know everything. And the reason I knew it was because I'd already done it myself. Tucked the cam lean out, got to shooting like garbage because I like to tear stuff apart and put it back together, and then ask them how to put it back together.
Yeah.
But let's get back to home. We're flying off left field here.
This is absolutely interesting. It's okay, because now I'm like writing down little questions for later or for another episode.
Yeah, but
down the rabbit hole I go. Okay.
And then last week I had a guy come by here that I did every one of his bows. He was so scared to get a new bow because he thought I wasn't doing anything with bows. And he saw the Field and Stream review. Brantley posted it on Facebook. He found me standing in a good old Corona line at one of the local restaurants trying to eat something besides, sandwiches at the damn house. Mm-hmm. And said, I'm bringing my bow to you. Where you at? I'm like, well, I'm at the wholesale. And this guy had sold it to him, pulled it out of the box, slapped a rest on it, slapped a side on it, half-ass time the QAD and sent on with life, and he'd already ripped half his fletchings off because it wasn't timed properly. Yeah. That's what gives people just god-awful bad names and makes, and hell, archery is not one of these industries where you can just pick it up once a year.
Well, no.
And, you pick up, you got to shoot a little bit. This guy is going out west. He was building an arrow setup. He'd watched enough bullshit online that he was going to try arrows. I had to fix those damn things too. But, yeah, I was like, take this point off, put in, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, he's like, I can't get it to shoot a group, and it was making a loud-ass noise. And, well, he pulled it back once, and his QAD was not even coming up to launch mode or whatever you want to call it, standing straight up to where it would actually release when he pulled the trigger. Then the guy had boogered out the hole on the adjustment, and so I had to do it from the back end by cutting the line a little bit because he threw away the little football. Yeah. Done all this stuff and tied it all in like an idiot. But it was a 10-minute fix, and it was stuff that he could have probably done at home. I'm glad he didn't, because that always scares me, because I've gotten a bunch of nasty stuff from people trying to do it at home by watching YouTube or something.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what I'm afraid of.
Watch YouTube, but make sure of your source. And not everybody that says, world-class archer, whatever, is actually a world-class archer.
Sure, yeah, I know.
And some people I know can shoot, but they couldn't cut the tape on a cardboard box and get out of it. It's just one of those things.
So if I don't want to watch...
I feel quick.
Well, so if I don't want to overwatch a lot of YouTube stuff and things, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. The spring is here, so I'm all about, like, turkey hunting, which I do with my shotgun, and then comes 3D season, and I haven't touched my bow for a couple of months, and I pull it out. What do you think, maybe like the top 3 things that I should inspect before I even go back to shooting it?
Okay, after it's been in the box, I'm rolling a brand new one around here so I can look at it. Look at the string, make sure nothing's cut, make sure nothing got hung. If it's got a horrible burr in it. Okay. That's the first thing. Your string comes apart. These things have stored so much energy. They do nasty things and things you never thought would happen with just a string coming off. But if your string looks good, check, hold it up and smack it. Okay. The whole reason for that is most cam systems now have modules for draw length. A few still don't, but most have modules. Probably one of the top things I ever saw was a module screw working itself out. So it gave a weird vibration. So they thought something else was wrong with their bow because it kind of transmits through the materials and it doesn't sound like it's coming. If you smack one at each if you smack the side of the bow, you know what a loose screw sounds like, and you'll be able to check it, tighten them up. Okay, that's probably number 2 on my list. Number 3 is put an arrow in it. Make sure your sight's still on tight, because I've seen sights come loose, which is dumb, but I had a guy that couldn't hit.
I've done that.
Oh, yeah, couldn't hit for anything, and I couldn't. And come to find out, he uses an HHA like I do, and his left-right adjustment housing was so weak that, depending on where it decided to vibrate to, he was off a full 6-8 inches. Yep. Okay, so we've tightened down all the screws.
Yeah, I've done it where, like, I can't figure out what the hell I'm doing. Oh, well, because I must have adjusted it and not tightened the screws.
Yeah, not giving it, tightened it back down, or it worked loose. Yep. Some of the other ones worked loose. That's another thing. All right, so we've checked everything for tightness. Put an arrow in it and pull it back. Don't go to 20-yard range. Step 5-10 feet away from your target. Pull it back. Don't try to hit the spot. Just get it in the center of the bag and kind of shut your eyes and squeeze. Just let you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Try to make your ears listen. You'll hear any magnetic vibrations. You'll hear anything. Does the bow sound like it did last year? You'll know if it doesn't. And that'll tell you if there's anything else going on. If you've got some of these, Bowtech was always the worst, but I have to give them credit for like pushing design. They made their own limbs where a lot of people didn't.
Sure.
And so there in the early 2000s, they'd have some limbs that went bad. But a limb that goes bad that's not because of a hanger. I've seen a lot of limbs go bad because they put it on a nail or whatever in their tree stand.
Mm-hmm.
It'll flake off and it'll have a real long, like pointed splinter on it. If it's got that, yes, you need to start calling your bow place and have them get you new limbs, but that's not as big of a factor as it used to be. But if it's not making any sounds or anything else, push it back and shoot it. If you're hitting good, then your bow is probably good. If the arrow rest doesn't sound like it's popping, nothing got a bunch of dust in it, then the bow is probably good. I mean, I've not seen, it's not, I'd say it's not rocket science, but the way these things look anymore, it probably is. That's going to be your first clue if something's wrong. It's going to be a sound or a visual inspection, which is something you almost should do every time. But a lot of people don't. Rests can slip. QADs, I've seen them go out, somebody knock it or it ride up. There's no point in tying them in. They make a good football. We always called it a football. It's a little thing that, you tie it to the cable with. Little D-loops. If you have a burr on your release, you will end up punching yourself in the face. Have it changed. I mean, I can't say it any plainer than that. I have watched grown men almost knock them themselves out because they had brand X, somehow had gotten something you can't even feel, but a burr in the caliper somewhere, and they kept shooting it, and it kind of fuzzed up, and they're like, oh, it'll be okay, and that next shot, it wasn't okay. And you punch yourself. Everybody should know how to tie a D-loop in. The string's not expensive. You can get it probably by the foot or whatever. I know you can get it online by the roll, but...
Sure.
All right, thanks for listening to part 1. Next week, I will post part 2. You're not going to want to miss part 2 because it's just as much information packed into a single podcast episode as there can be. This guy is a wealth of information, and I have like 8 future episodes and subjects that I really want to talk to him about. So be sure to head over to iTunes if you're on your iPhone. I think it's Apple Podcasts now. I don't know. I'm an Android user. So head over to Apple Podcasts, hit the subscribe button, find Bowcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, iTunes, wherever. Be sure to give us a 5-star review if you've enjoyed the information in this podcast episode, and we will chat at you next week.